good book, they say on the seventh day, he shall rest. Not for us here at Horsepower Happenings and Motor City Racing Network. We are live at the Hot Rod and Racing Expo at the Suburban Collection Showplace in Novi. I'm Rich France, and no Zach Heiser today. We've been working his tail off the past couple months, so we've given him the day off. But I do have my producer extraordinaire, Emily Roberts, with me. Emily, thank you for coming. We had a nice trip last night. We took a little Motor City Racing Promotions road trip down to the Attica Raceway Park in Ohio, watched some sprint car racing and some UMP late model racing on that dirt track. Had a good time. But our first guest here with us is with Victory Custom Trailers, and it's Chris Hettinger. Chris, welcome to Horsepower Happenings. Now, tell us just a little bit about, to get started, Victory Custom Trailers, your history, and what you guys do. Now, you guys have partnered with Champion Racing Association with the new Junior Late Model Series that they have. Tell us a little bit about how that came about.
Well, last year, I have a daughter that races. She's 11. We've been racing 4 midgets, micro sprints, and we're looking to move her up. So we bought her a Legend car. And we were looking for some other things to do, and as me and some of the other dads started talking and kind of came up with some ideas. They run a Junior Late Model Series out in California, and we're all sitting there going, oh, you know, I wish we had something like that around here. So we started talking about it a little bit more, and there seemed to be a lot of interest in it, and I reached out to RJ at CRA and said, hey, this is something, you know, I think you guys should do, and I think there's a lot of interest, and working together probably 3-4 months on it, and it all kind of came together pretty quick.
Yeah, and most of the time when we see 10, 15-year-olds, it's either in quarter midgets, you know, or bandoleros, but this really is a good way, if they have an aspiration to get into bigger cars, it's a great start for them.
Well, it is, because, you know, let's face it, the kids are starting, you know, both my daughters started racing quarter midgets at 5 years old. So you figure by the time they get 10, 11, you know, 5-6 years running quarter midgets, there is advancements in quarter midgets, but you kind of get to the point where you're ready to do something different. And unfortunately on the pavement side, there's no gap. You know, you either go from quarter midgets right into full size, you know, the CRA Jr Series or something like that at 14, 15, 16 years old. But there seemed to be a huge transition of 12, 13, 14-year-olds where there was nothing, really they were looking for the next step. We have micro sprints, obviously, are huge in Indiana, and a lot of the quarter midget kids were going to that. And we did that. We moved her at 9 years old, you know, 9, 10, you know, into 11, we were running the 600cc micros. But our issue is we're 5 hours from the closest track in Indiana. And we're primarily dirt or pavement racers, so the transition to dirt was a little tough. But I think it's a great tool. I mean, I think we learned a lot, but with us wanting to go down the pavement route, there really wasn't anything for us. So that's kind of where this junior late model deal is going to be great, because a lot of people don't like dirt. A lot of people like pavement both ways, so there was really a gap for pavement racers that, you know, needed that next transition.
Right. Now, Victory Custom Trailers Sales Junior Late Model Series is what it's called. Let's talk about the cars for a minute in this, because it's a lot of spec stuff for the kids, so we're not giving them a whole lot of power, and it's not expensive shock programs like they have in the late models these days. I mean, you're building one for your daughter, like you said. I mean, talk about, you know, the costs and how they're controlled in this series.
Well, the nice thing about when you start a new series that's a completely new, you start from a clean sheet of paper. So the advantage we had is the CRA could look at it and say, okay, how do we want to control this? Because it's not like everybody's already got cars and we're going to say, hey, we bought all that, but we need to take it away. It's, okay, we're all going to buy cars, so how do we keep it under control from day one? And obviously, you know, engines are expensive, and shocks are expensive, and chassis are expensive, and tires. So we looked at all the key, you know, ingredients that make racing expensive and said, okay, how can we keep that under control? And we had to keep in mind that, look, this is a development series for the kids. It's not, you know, we're not at a point where we need to be learning bump stops and tie downs and a lot of that stuff. We have plenty of time for that. So we decided, okay, the biggest thing is getting these kids get seat time and laps. So let's try and do it the most cost-effective way. And that's where we came up with a shock package. It's a spec shock. It's $170 shock, no bump stops, no coil bind. The motors are a stock GM 602 crate motor that has to be tagged from the factory, no rebuilds, nothing. So we really looked at every aspect, and the nice thing is I told RJ at CRA, I said, look, I'm going to look at it from the car owner standpoint, and let's look at every rule, and I'm going to tell you how I'm going to get around it. And then we'll look at it and say, how do we keep them from getting around it? And that's kind of how we transition to where we're at. They took some of my input, some of their input, some of the manufacturer's input, and got the rules package where it's at today. And I've had teams from Madera, California that run the junior late model that's more wide open contact me and say, we love the package, we wish we would have done that because we're getting carried away like the super late models are getting carried away.
Right, exactly. Now, they also get, because they're going to be paired up with the JAG CRA AllStars tour on their events, kind of gives and they usually have a pretty good turnout for those events. They also get a chance to race in front of some quite a few fans probably. And that's going to be good for the kids on that end of it as well.
Yeah, I think that's a great opportunity. You know, it gives them other drivers to look up to also. So they're at their track, they're going to be watching the older, the adults and the older kids race in kind of the spotlight. So they get to sit back and it gives them something to look forward to down the road.
Yep. Now, you're going to start off 2019 with an 8-race schedule, I believe, paired with, like we said, the JAG's All-Star Tour, CRA. What's the outlook for this? They're going to start out with 8 races and maybe in the next couple, get some more kids into it and then expand the schedule, or stick with this for just a little while longer?
I think we kind of, our whole goal starting off was we were aiming for 8 to 10 races. We ended up actually at 9 because we have Nashville at the end of the year. So it felt right where we wanted to, and we probably could have got more, but we know with these kids transitioning out of quarter midgets, some of them are still doing the quarter midgets or doing other things and the junior late model series. So we wanted to make sure they had time where they could run both if they wanted to. So keeping the schedule down, I think, keeps some of the cost out of it, still gives them a seat time, and we'll look at it. I mean, a couple of years, maybe next year, maybe it'll expand into a few more races, but it's also tough because they do want to tag along with the CRA AllStars Series, so you're kind of limited because we're trying to keep them on quarter-mile racetracks, so you're limited at what tracks you can run anyways.
And speaking of tracks, coming up in a few weeks where I'm going to be, my home track, Flat Rock Speedway, we're going to start out right there with the Motor City 200. The Victory Custom Trailer Sales Junior Late Model Series is going to make their debut there. A pretty good track for them. A little bit of room on that track, but not too big, quarter mile. As long as the kids can learn how to steer the cars and control the throttle, they should have a pretty good time there.
Yeah, I think so. It's a perfect racetrack. See, I grew up racing midgets, and midgets always put on a great show on a quarter mile, and Flat Rock is one of our favorite racetracks. So I think they're going to do well there. Like you said, there's a lot of room. You can pass. There's outside. I think people kind of underestimate these 10, 11, 12-year-old kids. I mean, they're coming out of quarter midgets, and every kid that I've seen come out of quarter midgets, Carson Horsepower, jumps in a full-size car and does very well right off the bat. So I think, none of us really know. It's a huge unknown, but I think we're going to be pretty impressed with how these kids do.
Well, I think all of us would be pretty surprised if all of our kids turned into Carson Hocevar. I don't know that that's going to happen because he's quite the talent at his age when he started at 12 years old, I think, up in Berlin. But that's pretty impressive. So if anybody's interested in Victory Custom Trailers, what you guys do, your products, what are the ways they can get a hold of you?
Obviously, website, victorycustomtrailers.com, Facebook page, Victory Custom Trailers. We're advertising a lot of shows. Obviously we're here sponsoring the series, so hopefully it's hard for you to find us, or easy for you to find us.
So Victory Custom Trailer Sales, opening night for you guys in the history of the series, Sunday, April 28th, Flat Rock Speedway. For the Motor City 200, we'll be talking a little more about that later with Scott Menlin because he's promoting that event. Chris, thanks for being on the show. One thing I got to tell you, I wanted to, when I met you, I was at the Michigan Auto Racing Fan Club banquet a little over a year ago when your dad received the Eddie Sachs Memorial Lifetime Achievement Award. He wasn't well. I thought it was so cool. He looked so happy when he got that award. How do you feel? I thought that was a great night for him that he was able to do that, and of course, unfortunately, he passed a couple months later.
Yeah, it was a big deal for our whole family. So you spend your whole life, 30 years racing, and it's when you get an award like that, it's pretty much to close out your career and show that what you did really meant something to people. So it was a really cool deal. I know he's really happy with it.
Yeah, well, we were all happy. We thought that was a cool deal, and condolences, because I just met you tonight, but I was there, and I thought that was an awesome deal at the fan club. And the fan club, Michigan Auto Racing Fan Club, and Bill Barnhart does a great job with that.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It was a great dinner. It's the only one I've ever been to, but it was very impressive.
All right. Chris, thank you very much. We will see you at Flat Rock on April 28th, right?
Yeah, oh yeah. I'll be there racing too, so it's going to be an interesting weekend.
You got it. Thank you. All right. That's Chris Hettinger from Victory Custom Trailers, and we will be back with Scott Menlin, the Chief Cook and Bottle Washer of Motor City Racing Promotions. You've been listening to Horsepower Happenings on the Motor City Racing Network.